Good morning. I know we have a few extra folks joining us, but I want to go ahead and get us started. Welcome to the Advancing Post-Secondary Success for Florida Students webinar. I'm Stacy Beyer, Senior Vice President of Community Engagement, Strategic Partnerships, and Operations for Florida, and the facilitator for our webinar today. The purpose of today is to ground us in why post-secondary education matters through research and data, and to launch a brand new RFP focused on Florida student post-secondary success. To help us kick off, please allow me to introduce Helios President and CEO, Paul Luna.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning to everyone. I want to extend our thanks and appreciation to all of you who have chosen to join us, to take time from your busy schedule to join us today and learn a little bit more about Helios and in particular our RFP process. I'd like to take a moment as well and just acknowledge that we do have a couple of Helios Education Foundation board members who are joining with us today. I know Dr. Donna Ripley, Dr. Larry Rice, Mark Fernandez are joining us and listening in, and which I think is an indication of the commitment of the leadership of our board to the work that we do, and we very much appreciate their participation and all the great guidance and direction that they give to us as a foundation. For some of you, we know that this may be the first time engaging with Helios Education Foundation and our work supporting post-secondary attainment for all students across Florida and Arizona. So I just want to take a brief moment and share a little bit about the foundation. One of the things that we share often is that we really pride ourselves on being more than a grant-making organization. We think ourselves as a community impact organization, partnering with organizations like yourself and providing support and direction and engagement in public policy, advocacy, using data to help drive solutions to improve student outcomes. We do grant making, we provide communications to share that information and the learning, and we take this holistic approach because we think that's the best way to really impact student success systemically now and into the future. But we're also grounded in 4 fundamental beliefs that I want to share. We're driven by these beliefs, and everything we do are grounded in these beliefs. And our beliefs are community, investment, equity, and partnership. And what we mean by that is we think of our work in education and define really this idea that through education is how we improve communities. And in fact, the greatest way to impact, we really believe in this transformational power of education to make our communities better, which is ultimately what I think we're all about. We think about investment, this idea that education is the most important investment that we can make in our community in helping to improve community outcomes. And education is an investment and not an expense. We think about the work in terms of equity in education, this idea that every student, regardless of their background, where they're born, color of their skin, zip code with which they live, this idea that every student in Arizona and Florida deserves equal opportunity to be able to succeed in their educational journey and to achieve educational success. And finally, grounded in the belief of partnership and collaboration, because we know that it's only through partnership and collaboration that we actually can be successful in helping to improve student outcomes, which is why an opportunity to engage with you today through this webinar is really important to us as an opportunity to think about partnership opportunities. Helios is a 20-year organization, and we've been committed to creating opportunities for all students to succeed and making lasting improvements in education across Florida and Arizona. And it's something we want to lean in even further now as we celebrate our 20th anniversary. So we're really appreciative that you would take the time again to be with us today. We think that the work that we all do in helping students succeed is more important than ever before. And that's why we wanted to take an opportunity to share a little bit more about Helios, and how we might be able to work together in the spirit of aligned community partnership. Our work is also grounded in an idea that we place special emphasis and focus on historically underserved students in education. And we look at, and that's where the data-driven partnership and data-driven activities come and influence our work. We want to make sure, again, that we're helping to close whatever barriers or gaps might have existed historically for some students. And working together, we think we can do that. And that's where we have significant opportunity to improve student outcomes for all students across Arizona and Florida. So in the webinar today, what you'll hear is a little bit about Helios's data-driven work and the way we think about the work, and how we can better support and improve student outcomes in Florida, and to work on increasing the college-going and post-secondary degree attainment for the entire state. And we'll also share, as Stacy identified, is a little information about this request for proposal process, which is meant to explore and identify potential partners around the state that are aligned to this work, to this mission, and see how we might be able to work together to improve these student outcomes that I've made reference to. So once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We look forward to engaging more fully through this process. We want to thank you for your interest in learning more about Helios and how we might be able to work together to support the students of Florida. And so with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Dr. Paul Peralt, and he can share a little bit more about our Florida-based research and how we think about our work. So Dr. Peralt, please take it over.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for joining us on this webinar today. We're really excited at Helios about sharing some of our work and really thinking about the work that we're trying to do in Florida to improve student outcomes for everyone. My name is Paul Peralt. I am Senior Vice President of our Community and Impact and Learning team. And joining me with today for this part of the webinar is Kimberly Lent Morales, who is our Director of Research and Evaluation. Really, again, can't stress how excited we are to kind of work with you, share this work, as Paul talked about, the partnership that we need at Helios. At Helios, we are fortunate enough to approach our work with research and data. And at Helios, we're driven by three core metrics. Third grade reading proficiency. So, the proportion of those students that are reading at grade level at the end of third grade really tells us a lot about how students are going to perform and what we should be thinking about if they need other kind of wraparound supports or other supports to make sure that they catch up. College enrollment. As we think about the state of Florida and its opportunities, how can we better serve students and improve the economy? And we look at college enrollment to understand after high school, how we're doing in that. And then finally, getting to college is one thing, but what happens after that? Do you make it through? So we really pay attention at looking at increasing college degree attainment, so post-secondary degree attainment, and getting that number to Florida's ultimate goal around SAIL to 60. And those are really our base of all the work that we kind of think about is how all the time can we be thinking about improving those areas. So driving our research is a goal to provide insight and strategy on how we can improve the three metrics we just kind of discussed. To give you a brief insight of this work, Kim and I are providing on these next two slides a set of key research briefs that we have released in Florida over the last 3 years. We're only going to point out a couple of quick things about these briefs, but we wanted to highlight these so that if you had more questions or had more information, that you would be able to search those on our website at helios.org to dig in a little bit deeper. And so we hope that if you haven't seen one or more of these briefs, that you take a gander at them because we really believe that they help provide additional insights to our work at Helios, but also for our partners of how we can work together and improve educational outcomes for all students. But more importantly, after we do this quick introduction around the research area, the research briefs, we're also going to spend the bulk of our time focusing on the economic case for students going to college in Florida. Because that's really the core issue in what we're talking about today. How can we get more students prepared through K-12 to be ready for college, give them opportunities to go to college so that it's financially affordable and that they can do that, and really have that choice, and so that the choice isn't made for them. And so we want to continue to make sure that there's that economic case there and that we're really highlighting that. So for purposes of today's meeting, we have broken the slides here in the two domains, so K through 12 and post-secondary. Under K-12, we examined and identify and want to highlight these ones right here, strategies and practices to close the gender gap, chronic absenteeism and practices to improve students coming back to school, and lastly, how accelerated coursework contributes to increase post-secondary attainment. Now, why are these important? Because, these are the stages of time when we can really see that students get off the track to do well enough to perform well at college. And, for example, one of the things that we like to highlight from our gender work is, and many people know this already, is girls typically outperform boys in reading and writing. And so they graduate at higher numbers, going to college at higher numbers. So what are those strategies and practices that we could do so that we can improve those outcomes for boys that are in K through 12? And so that we don't have these variances in who's going to college and those opportunities. Chronic absenteeism has been a major focus since the pandemic. And surprisingly for a lot of people, our research has really shown both here in Florida and in Arizona that chronic absenteeism didn't get back to its previous area before the pandemic, but actually increased for a couple years after the pandemic. And so as we think about getting students ready and prepared for college and doing well in school, it's hard to see how that happens if we don't make sure that those students are in the classroom. And so in this brief, we highlight and share the data and the trends, but we also share promising practices and what other schools and districts are doing as well. And then finally, getting students to think about, am I college ready and that? And that's really the focus of the AP and dual enrollment work. How can those courses really have shown that even if you take one of those courses, your likelihood of going to college more than doubles. And, those students that have taken those courses, AP or dual enrollment, are much more likely to be successful as well and see themselves in college. And so putting those together, these are some of the things that we have really worked on to strategize back to those metrics. How do we improve opportunities for students and how do we get them in school? In the post-secondary realm of our research, in the last 3 years, we focused on factors that jeopardize post-secondary enrollment. We analyzed the pathways and identified ways that students can be more successful for transferring from the college system to the university. So thinking about ways that students can earn that bachelor's degree after they've gone and either earned an associate's or been on a pathway to get that bachelor's. We've looked at the return on investment for Black students going to and completing college, and finally looked at the importance of HBCUs and how the importance that they can play for students that are looking for different pathways as well than some of the other universities or colleges. With that, one of the things that continues to come out of this work is college affordability is a prevailing concern for all students. Many students are still think that college is unaffordable and unattainable to them. And in Florida, that's a serious issue because when we look at state tuition rates, Florida is one of the most affordable states, actually is number one in the country for affordability. Identified with our partners around AA students that really take higher level of credits, so full-time, typically we look at that as 12 credits, take fewer or no developmental courses, and pass math and English in their first year. Those are typically the students that are more successful in transferring. So how do we put in those supports and practices that enable those students to get there? And then looking across, regardless of race or ethnicity, regardless of socioeconomic status, looking at higher education continues to be the pathway to prosperity for Floridians. So if you want to look at the best opportunity of outcomes which you're going to have, it is through post-secondary. And that's really, what we're going to talk about as we go into, our research that we just completed around billions to gain. So at Helios, we prioritize secondary attainment because we believe in the power of education and what it can do for an individual in their lives. Broadly, post-secondary attainment increases value, no matter which way we slice or dice it. So value for individual Floridians. If you go and complete post-secondary education, you're going to have higher lifetime earnings. You're typically going to have better health. You're going to have better access to food and more opportunities, especially when we're looking at more and more jobs that are being automated. It's value for Florida communities. So, healthier families, lower crime rates when more people have higher education, and it's attractive to businesses. And we're looking at a time when there is newer technology and things being created, and the workforce is looking at, where can we go? What states can we work at where we have a highly educated workforce? Florida is already doing fantastic with 12 universities or public universities, the college system and that, but how can it ensure that it keeps that going? And then finally, the value for Florida, higher state revenues, lower welfare and crime spending, more productive state economy. Really, as we'll talk about in a second, billions to gain. How can that really help keep taxes low, keep, no income taxes and those aspects. That's going to be important as we really kind of think about what the future of Florida looks like, and post-secondary success actually helping us to get there. So today, one of the biggest challenges to our economy is the narrative that college isn't worth it, that it's too expensive, that you have to go in the debt, that it's smarter to go out of state, or go another route, not out of state. And I'm sure if I was polling you all right now, that if I called on you or polled you, that certainly all of us have that college isn't worth it or too expensive in the last year. Probably a majority, if not all of you, would say that you've heard that in the last 6 months. And I'm quite sure that many of you would have said that you've heard that in the last month or even the last week. And that's a challenge. And so to counter that narrative, we wanted to understand at Helios the facts. We were tired of hearing those anecdotal stories. We wanted to really make sure that we were understanding the facts. So Helios undertook a study of the economic outcomes of going to college. And that's really what we're going to share with you today. So as we did this and we're looking at those economic, I want to highlight that this research builds off an earlier study that we did in Arizona in 2023. It was carried out by a national economist, Clive Belfield, Kimberly, and myself, and really again, trying to zero in on what is that benefit to college going and college completion. Now, to do this, we analyzed the economic impact in 3 ways. The individual benefit. And that individual benefit is from the perspective of you. If you were sitting here right now and you were thinking as a high school graduate, should I go to college? What is the lifetime earnings that I should expect to have in my life if I go to college, if I get an associate's degree, if I stop after high school, after my diploma, what can I expect to earn in my lifetime? And that's a great tool that that people can think about and use, counselors and others, just to get people thinking about, what does the future hold if I take one path or another? The other aspect of the economic outcomes is those social impact, how college enrollment and completion are good for the communities in the state of Florida. So increasing those gross earnings, health status, reductions in crime, that really is those social impacts. And then the fiscal, finally, those looks at the last one I talked about, of the value. What are the tax benefits for the state of Florida? Federal tax benefits, state tax benefits, keeping things low, keeping other things, and that aspect is, like what really is now at the state level, and how is this good? So we move from that individual level, the kind of the communities that you live in level, and then finally as the whole state. And I'm one of those people that kind of, sometimes like to cheat ahead and look at the conclusion. And so I'm going to give you the conclusion right now. No matter what way we look at these 3 outcomes, and Kimberly's going to walk you through them in just a moment, we're going to see that any way that you do this, any way that you walk through these, any way that we really can think about this, your outcomes are going to be more positive economically if you go to college and if you complete college. I'm going to start with the individual, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly. I'm going to give just this broad view. So one of the things that we can do, and what you're looking at here, is for the cohort of 23-24 students that graduated, what they can expect to earn in the state of Florida over their lifetime. And so highlight lifetime earnings for individuals with bachelor's degrees are projected to be nearly 2 times greater than for high school graduates. So high school graduate, about $790,000. Somebody that earns a bachelor's degree, about $1.6 million. Now, that's for the whole state of Florida, and we don't have time today to show you if we put this down by county, but in many counties, when we start looking at the data, if you earn a bachelor's degree, you're earning more than 3 times that. And so really important to understand is that individual, you can earn a lot more over your time and have more opportunities with that post-secondary education. Kimberly, let me turn it over to you to kind of walk us through some more of the data.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul. So to kind of recap a little bit also of what Paul just said, there is a stark difference between those earning potentials between a high school dropout and what they can expect versus someone who attends and graduates from college. So looking at what are those ratios that Paul just showed on that previous slide, when we're looking at it by race, ethnicity, and different student group, there is a range. So when we look at high school graduates versus someone who dropped out of high school, it ranges between 1.3 and 1.8 times more likely to earn more money than a high school dropout alone. When we start talking about bachelor degree earners, it's 2.6 to 3.1 times more in dollars over their lifetime compared to a high school dropout. On this next slide, we're going to see what it looks like for racial groups. So it's important to note out that all racial groups benefit from more education, but there are some differences, especially when we start looking at those lower levels of education, especially a high school graduate, some college and associate's degrees. As we look at these next two slides, you will see it's not equal across these groups. So one thing that we do like to point out is you do see some parity at the lower groups. So on the slide right now, we have Black and Hispanic individuals. Again, we see that great trend where we want to see that it's increasing as an individual earns more degree. And then when we go to the next slide, looking at the white population and other population, you do start to see that white individuals on average are earning more at lower levels compared to other groups. So just something that we always like to point out, everyone benefits, but there are notable differences. And then I think the real key to our report were these different scenarios that we ran. And this is where we get the billions to gain title. So we were able to run 4 different models to see what happens if Florida invests time, money, effort, resources to increase college enrollment, college degree completion, college readiness, and then parity by racial and ethnic group. And the one that, again, really gets our headline is that if Florida were to increase enrollment in college for this past high school graduating cohort by 10%, we would have 8.38 billion to gain in social gains, and then 3.4 billion in fiscal gains. And it's important to note that's per cohort. So every year that we start increasing degree enrollment by 10%, it compounds upon itself. And then again, with the other scenarios, degree completion rate by 20%, we see around almost 8 billion in social gains, 2.3 in fiscal gains, the readiness gain. This is something that we look at to try and combat some of the learning loss that has been reported throughout the pandemic. Again, 8.75 in social gains, 3.4 in fiscal gains, and then looking at parity as well, 4.6 in social gains and 2 billion in fiscal gains. So we went through that kind of fast, but to recap some of our key takeaways before I turn it back to Paul to talk about what Florida can do, there's a clear benefit for Floridians to go to college and for our state to encourage Floridians to go to college. Floridians who enroll in college, they earn more throughout their lifetime, and this is through increased earnings and more economic opportunity. When an individual gets an associate's degree, they can expect to earn around 24% more over their lifetime compared to someone who only has a high school diploma. When we look at that same comparison for bachelor's degree earners, it's 67 more than someone who only has a high school diploma. And again, we looked at this from the individual, the fiscal, and the social level. The personal returns are really significant, despite the fact that there are variances when we look at different racial groups and education levels. And like we just showed, Florida has billions to gain annually by increasing college enrollment, college readiness, college completion, and racial parity in enrollment and completion. And also, if you get a chance to look at our report, which I hope you do, we are able to see what this means per student. So we wanted to call that out here. So it depends on the degree level, but it ranges between the return per student is 20,000 to 40,000 more per high school student. And that's 2 to 4 times more than the state actually invests each year to get those students through public education. So with that, Paul, I'm going to turn it back to you to talk about what Florida can do.
And for us, we've talked about what can Florida do, our partners, what can Florida do, the state, to really make sure that, we're doing the best for students in the state. One is ensure students are more prepared for college and the workforce. So better opportunities through K through 12 to really make sure that students are reading proficiently at the end of 3rd grade, that they have those math skills that really can take them to the next step. Align ourselves with organizations active in promoting workforce and college readiness. Organizations should really be promoting this and how they can get students there and making sure that we're having good partnerships with those. hold ourselves accountable for moving this economic agenda forward. So, these things can pop up and we can talk about them sometimes, but how do we actually make sure that they stay on people's radar and we're pushing this? The numbers are clear what we need in the state of Florida, and the types of jobs that are going to be important for students to have. Grow exposure and awareness of your work, industries and skill sets needed for success. Foster relationships between the business community and college and university systems. Those are going to be key because those business communities are looking for those skilled workers in the future. And then really finally and lastly, keep Florida students in Florida. We don't want Florida students to go otherwhere and get this kind of training and then not come back. That doesn't really help Florida since we're really kind of already investing in them. So let's keep Florida students in Florida. And with that, let's turn it back over to Stacy. I know she might have some questions for us.
Thank you, Paul. And as just a reminder for all of our attendees, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will work through the chat to address any questions that have come up. So one of the first questions that came up is, what is meant by increases in college readiness, and how is that measured?
Increases in college readiness, a number of ways that we can measure college readiness. We think about skill testing of mathematics and English, so in the state of Florida, that could be measured by, what ACT testing there is, what SAT testing, how kids, I call them kids, how students perform on Florida's state testing as well. Those are ways that we can have indices of if you have the academic skill sets to be ready for going to college.
Kimberly, this next question I'll toss to you. Can you share a comparison for students who have earned vocational or technical certifications in the data that we presented?
Yeah, so great question. So our data sources, and we can include I'm not sure if it's already in the chat, but we can include the link to the report and the methodology in the chat. It comes from census data and Bureau of Labor Statistics data. So one of the pitfalls of that is that unfortunately we cannot pull out folks who have a vocational degree, specifically when we look at the different degree levels. So those folks are likely embedded within some college or an associate's degree if they've gone on to get an associate's degree. But there are great state resources. The Department of Education has done a lot of work to put this out. And there's different reports where you can find some of that information. But unfortunately, we cannot pull that out given the data sources for this report. Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks for that. And the next question is, what is the difference between social gains and fiscal gains? Paul, I'll throw that to you.
Sure. And the social and fiscal gains have some overlaps, but the social gains are thinking more about the local community. So what does like your health index look like in your local community? What how's your access to better parks, better hospital, those aspects. The fiscal gains is, what does it mean for the tax revenue for the entire state of Florida? So it's getting more, when we look at that, it's getting bigger around what does it mean for the entire place that you live in, the state of Florida, compared to if we were just looking at Orlando, Hillsborough. And in fact, one of the things that we will be doing in the next week or so, or in the next couple of weeks, is releasing the individual county level analysis. And that really helps you start thinking about what's the difference between those societal, which is going to focus more on your local communities, and those gains that are focused on the state as the fiscal.
Thank you, Paul. And another question we got is, I know there was a presentation at Leadership Florida, and there were comments that exposure and successful completion of a college dual enrollment program during high school was highly beneficial. Can you comment on how our research has supported that?
Kimberly, why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, so Paul mentioned the report that we include a little screenshot of the cover, a report that we did looking at accelerated coursework a few years ago. I would highly encourage whoever asked this question to go read that report because it looks at just this. It looks at students who took dual enrollment in AP courses, what was their college going rate, what was their college completion rate. And I know students who took dual enrollment were 2 times as likely to go on to college. So I think that's a great stat right there. But it's a really great report that we have outlined and it's included. So I would highly encourage someone to go to helios.org and read that.
And I would just add on that, and it also shows how more students that take those courses can get to college with credits already, meaning that they're already ahead of the game when we're thinking about the financial costs.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have had a few questions about how can we access some of these research reports. So Paul, could you just tell people where they can find our research?
Yeah, they can find all of our research if you go to the research landing page at www.helios.org. And maybe we can even in the chat put in a QR code or a link that will let people directly go to those.
Terrific. And here's another question. We've talked a lot about post-secondary education in terms of going to college. Whether Helios has done it, or are you aware of any other research that's been done that focuses on other forms of post-secondary education, such as going to career or technical school?
There have been other studies that have looked at career and technical schools, and we're not saying that those options don't have opportunities for success too. That's why we look at it as the economic case. What can you financially, see yourself making if you take one of those routes? But what I will stress is you can find other things that will look at those kind of pathways. What we really focus on at Helios is making those pathways stackable, so that if you do decide to get a certificate or you do get an associate's degree, or any of those things, that at some point in your life you might be like, I want to take the next step. And so how can you then add that additional education? And so while we kind of really highlighted the college and more the associates and bachelors, there are pathways that people can take and then, continue to build. And that's what we are always looking for, those opportunities to build your educational pathway.
Great. Another question that we got is, have you seen any research around how educational programming in high school that shows after college, sort of connects how programming in high school that is more career tech focused and links to jobs in the state of Florida, if that helps students?
Yeah, so I think when we're looking at it, like Paul said, in Helios land, we're talking about 2 and 4 year degrees and thinking about the stackability. So I know a lot of folks are now talking about CTE in high school as more as like career connected learning, and how are we getting students onto a pathway towards career, college much earlier. And there are tons of research projects that are going on. They're not Helios projects to look at some of those things, but I think if you look at a lot of the work the Lumina Foundation is doing, some of these other big foundations in our space, they're doing quite a bit of research around that and putting out reports.
Yeah. And I would just highlight too, as we think about this and the questions that, some of these, as we get a little bit more nuanced, I will ask our leaders to put, the webinar leaders to put both Kimberly and my email address in the chat, because these are some really good conversations that we could dig deeper into with people as well.
And I'll also add that our webinar facilitator did put a direct link to the Helios website where they can find all of the research reports. Going back to the billions research, one of the questions that has come up is, what is the time frame used to decide the total amount earned per level or degree?
So we're really looking at people's lifetime earnings over a time frame of really 24 to 25 to 64. And we're looking at that, and that's the way that we really kind of calculate, the differences between if you get a high school, if you stop your education after high school, or if you go to advanced degree. So looking over your lifetime earnings for the average adult, and that kind of matches up with how the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and other groups look at that kind of data.
I think it's technically age 75, from 18 to 75.
Yeah. So
Fantastic. Well, I think
unfortunately, that means we're going to be working longer in our lives too.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up this part of the Q&A session. I do want to point out that our webinar facilitator has inserted Paul and Kimberly's email addresses for any additional questions that we weren't able to handle during the webinar. You can direct your questions straight to them. And now we are going to transition to an introduction of our request for proposals. We are proud to announce that Helios is officially launching an RFP focused on advancing post-secondary success for historically underrepresented students in Florida. The Florida Student Post-Secondary Success RFP serves as a call to action along with next steps for the information you've heard during today's webinar. This project aligns with Helios's longstanding mission, strategic priorities, and demonstrates our commitment to creating equitable access for students across the state. The RFP is an extension of our Florida Student Success Initiatives. We will now share details regarding the RFP, including the work of Helios's Florida Community Engagement Team leading the process. But let me start by introducing who we are. In addition to myself, both Walter Jennings and Cherie Wright serve as directors of Student Success Initiatives for Florida. Our community engagement team seeks to build and strengthen and maintain meaningful connections with the community, our allies, and strategic partners. We do this through a myriad of mechanisms that include community engagement, community investments, and strategic partnerships. Our team's diversity in skills, experiences, and backgrounds enrich our ability to connect with various communities. Collectively, we are dedicated to fostering a collaborative and inclusive environment to ensure all voices are heard and valued. At this time, I would like to introduce Cherie Wright, who will provide insights into our Florida Student Success Initiative and the research basis for the RFP. I also want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our RFP homepage later this week. So while you may be inclined to take feverish notes, you will be able to revisit what is presented today. In addition, mark your calendars. We will be hosting a more specific Q&A sessions for the RFP on January 29th to address any lingering questions you may have. Cherie, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by sharing more about Helios's Florida Student Success Initiative, as Stacy just shared. Earlier today, our CEO, Paul Luna, talked about the work of Helios Education Foundation across our footprint in both Florida and Arizona. As a reminder, Helios believes that regardless of zip code, every student deserves access to a high-quality education. This is grounded in our knowledge that education changes lives and strengthens communities. To achieve the goal of creating opportunities for success in post-secondary education, we are intentional about promoting equity through investment. Additionally, one of Helios's guiding values is collaboration. We build strong partnerships and foster collaboration through thoughtful and passionate leadership. This value is essential as it allows us to have a deeper, more meaningful relationship in communities where we serve. We recognize that preparing students for college success starts much earlier than college itself. To this end, our strategy focuses on 3 pillars across the education continuum. First, we seek to support proficient reading aptitude by the end of 3rd grade. Data tells us that whether or not a student goes to college is directly connected to their quality of education and reading proficiency in early grades. To get there, we look to support the continual improvement of quality early learning teaching and expanding the use of research-based literacy initiatives grounded in the science of reading. Second, we're focused on increasing college enrollment rates for students. We work to accomplish this by creating pathways to more rigorous coursework and supporting the advising and mentoring of high school students. Additionally, we are working to increase FAFSA completion rates through support of effective practices at the institutional, federal, state, and local levels. Finally, we prioritize student attainment of 2- and 4-year degrees. This includes promoting comprehensive efforts that elevate systemic approaches to student success, such as co-curricular support and financial aid. While Helios supports all students, we maintain a particular focus on closing persistent opportunity gaps. As a data-informed organization, and as showcased in our research, we prioritize closing opportunity gaps in education for historically underserved populations. As Dr. Paul Perrault showed earlier, in Florida, there are groups of students who represent a significant segment of the state's population who have experienced historical gaps in college enrollment and degree attainment. For example, data from the Florida Department of Education scorecard shows that only 47.2% of Black high school graduates enrolled at a college after graduation. Similarly, those students who are economically disadvantaged, those that are eligible for free and reduced lunch, enrolled at a rate of 47.8%. Ultimately, fewer enrollments in college after high school lead to lower post-secondary completion rate. In Florida, for example, only 35.1% of the state's Black residents between the ages of 25 and 64 hold a post-secondary degree. These numbers carry significant social impact as college enrollment and completion lead to increases in gross earnings, health indicators, and other social factors influenced by increased attainment. Individuals benefit from college attainment primarily in terms of higher lifetime earnings, in addition to increased labor force participation and job security. Helios works to make systemic investments that will have a sizable impact on communities most in need. We're focused on transforming the trajectory of Florida students' lives by increasing educational access, narrowing opportunity gaps, and championing the collective success of all students. The opportunity to work with new community partners addressing the gaps for historically underrepresented students is what brings us to Florida Student Post-Secondary Success RFP. I would now like to introduce my colleague, Walter Jennings, who will discuss the details of the RFP.
Thank you, Cherie. Good morning, everyone. Rooted in much of the data and research presented today, the purpose of Helios's RFP initiative is to identify and invest in programs that have demonstrated success in closing the persistent college enrollment and degree attainment gaps that exist for historically underrepresented students. Our goal is to identify and partner with organizations that demonstrate a commitment to creating equitable learning environments and fostering academic excellence among Florida students. We believe that through collaboration, we can develop innovative solutions that address systemic barriers and enhance educational access and achievement. Additional goals of this RFP process include identifying new partners engaging with historically underrepresented students and strategies to increase college enrollment and degree attainment, providing funding to advance new or expanded innovative programming focused on closing gaps for historically underrepresented students who have the most significant opportunity gaps in college enrollment and degree attainment. And finally, we look to learn from successful models of college access and degree attainment across the state of Florida. Now, Cherie previously mentioned our investment strategy that focuses on 3 pillars across the education continuum. For the purposes of this RFP, we will only be considering projects emphasizing the following key pillars: increasing college enrollment and the attainment of 2- and 4-year degrees. The focus on these pillars is backed by data that supports that these are also areas where the historically underserved have the greatest opportunity gaps. In an effort to maximize our focus and remain efficient with limited resources, we are not considering proposals aligned to our 3rd grade reading pillar for this project. If you have an interest in that area, please email us at floridarfp@helios.org. In relation to college enrollment and degree attainment, we seek to invest in programs that align with one or more of the following strategies: advancing student success in accelerated coursework in high school. This includes advanced placement and dual enrollment, improving coaching and guidance in college preparatory activities, supporting students in the transition from high school to college, addressing low college enrollment rates as a result of chronic absenteeism in high school, and supporting activities designed to help students to persist in and graduate from college. Helios utilizes a system of quantifiable metrics for each pillar to measure the effectiveness and impact of a project. Some of these metrics include increasing student participation and success rates in accelerated coursework. This includes advanced placement, dual enrollment, international baccalaureate, Cambridge, with the goal to receive a passing score. Providing mentor support to students, which entails one-on-one college access support that prepares them for life after high school, including exposure to career fields and guidance on course of study, college choice, or financial aid. providing direct services to students that increases application to and enrollment in college, providing direct services and mentoring to college students to support and increase persistence to their second year of college. This includes one-on-one support that encourages persistence and prepares them for life after college. And it highlights topics such as attendance, college transition, course of study, and exposure to career fields. And finally, providing direct services to increasing six-year graduation rates for a bachelor's degree. Each proposed project for this RFP should include and align to at least one metric. The comprehensive list of Helios's metrics for college enrollment and degree attainment can be viewed on the RFP webpage under the More Resources section. Helios focuses its grant making in 6 counties in Florida with some of the highest populations and concentrations of historically underrepresented students. These 6 counties include Hillsborough, Pinellas, Orange, Osceola, Miami-Dade, and Broward. Any proposed RFP project must work within one or more of these 6 counties. We are seeking to identify partners working within these communities and with students that boast the greatest opportunity gaps. The RFP process will be conducted in 2 phases. During phase 1, interested organizations will submit a notice of interest or NOI outlining organizational background, the proposed project, and alignment with the goals and strategies articulated in the RFP. In phase 2, Helios will invite selected organizations from the NOI submissions in phase 1 to develop and submit a full proposal. While the RFP serves as a limited time opportunity to engage with Helios, particularly for grant funding, we look forward to developing new relationships with organizations who may become partners with Helios in the future. But it is for this reason, current Helios partners with active grant agreements are not eligible to apply for this RFP. These organizations may serve as a fiscal agent or sponsor for another organization's project, which we'll discuss in additional detail shortly, or they may be a collaborative partner in a proposal, but they may not be the primary applicant for this RFP. Additional information on eligibility requirements can be viewed on the RFP webpage in the Florida Student Post-Secondary Success RFP Overview document under the More Resources section. All interested applicants must submit a notice of interest through our Smart Simple grant portal by the noted deadline of Friday, February the 7th. The NOI form, which can be accessed on the RFP website, requests the following information. Organizational information includes general information about the organization, such as the legal name, organizational mission, vision, and the focus population. You will also be asked to upload your annual organizational budget, including revenue and expenses. Applicants that require another organization to accept and be responsible for grant funds on their behalf will be asked to provide their fiscal agent's information. Please be advised that formal evidence of the relationship, which may include a memorandum of understanding or a letter of agreement, will be required if approved for phase 2 of the RFP. Applicants who do not require a fiscal agent will be allowed to skip this section. The description of organizational purpose, goals, strategies, and outcomes allows us to gain insight into how the organization is structured and functions. It includes information such as the purpose of your organization, organizational goals and outcomes, including any key metrics, key strategies of work, organizational accomplishments, and any existing work in the college-going and/or degree attainment arena. The first 3 sections of the NOI gives us the opportunity to learn more about your organization. The final section, Proposed Project, is the applicant's first opportunity to discuss the potential project in detail. Allow me to go into this section in a little more depth. The Proposed Project section is comprised of several subtopics intended to provide a clear picture of the project. Following the project title, the project purpose asks applicants to define the main project purpose and provide high-level goals and activities. This should include a strong, clear plan to achieve measurable outcomes and accomplish goals that address college enrollment and/or degree attainment. Please be specific about the college enrollment and/or college completion strategies you will employ throughout your project, especially those that prioritize historically underrepresented students. Applicants should also use this section to identify what challenges or issues will be solved or changed as a result of the work. Also, be sure to know that this is a new or expanded project. The need for this section allows the applicant to highlight the importance of the project, including identifying key community indicators, opportunity gaps, and characteristics of the population to be served. Strong proposals will describe the focus population for this specific project and provide data to explain the case for the project's focus on this population in terms of gaps in college preparatory, college enrollment, and/or degree attainment outcomes. Applicants are asked to please include the total number of proposed participants, demographics, and age range if available. Applicants will use the alignment section to anchor how their project aligns with potential best practices for advancing college enrollment and/or degree attainment. This should include any evidence-based research that informs strategies for the project. Applicants are encouraged to expound on why these strategies are a part of their project and how they coincide with organizational practice. In the project timeframe, we ask applicants to designate the start and end dates of the project. This should include both planning and implementation stages if pertinent. Please be advised that the full length of your project timeframe should not exceed 3 years. In the budget portion, applicants are asked to indicate the total project budget amount and the amount to be requested from Helios. This information should be provided in basic narrative form. We are not setting a specific limit on the amount an applicant requests through this RFP. We want our partners to request what they need for this project in order for it to be effectively implemented. However, there are some parameters that will strengthen proposals, such as a diversity of funders investing in the project, decreased reliance on Helios funding over time, and demonstrated sustainability beyond Helios as a funding source. The requested Helios amount should be based on the overview of the project. The financial request to Helios should not represent more than 25% of an organization's overall operating budget. Please be advised that Helios does not fund capital campaigns, building new facilities, support to schools for general operating funds, teacher recruitment, professional development, or classroom materials unless all of these things are related to a specific program or initiative to be funded. Also, Helios does not fund replacement funding for an existing program, replacement funding for public funds, or organizations that do not have education support as one of their primary missions. While we're not setting a maximum amount for an organizational request for their project, we expect funded projects will have annual project budgets of between $150,000 to $300,000. Please note that the NOI form sections do have word limits denoted in the instructions. In addition, all information must be entered and submitted at one setting. You can minimize the browser window or tab and come back to the form, but you cannot close out of the browser window and come back later. Your information will not be saved. NOIs will be evaluated based on the noted information, and select organizations will be invited to submit a formal proposal. The RFP timeline is as follows. January 15th signals the beginning of the NOI application process. On January 29th, we will host a question and answer session specifically for phase 1 of the RFP, which is our notice of interest. On Friday, February the 7th, this will serve as the due date for all NOI submissions. On February the 18th, select organizations from phase 1 will be invited to submit a formal proposal. On February the 24th, we will host a question and answer session specifically for those organizations that have been invited to phase 2 of the RFP process. On Monday, March the 10th, this signals the due date for all phase 2 full proposal RFP submissions. All RFP award recipients will be notified by the late spring. NOIs must be received by Friday, February the 7th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and late submissions will not be considered. The RFP webpage may be accessed by scanning the QR code that appears on your screen currently. Please be advised that there are several resources available on our webpage to assist with learning more about the RFP process. Now, before I go into those, many of you I know have already scanned the QR code. Please bookmark it and come back to the presentation. Thank you. Now, the additional resources that are found on the webpage to assist you in your NOI process include the Florida Student Post-Secondary Success RFP Overview. This provides a written explanation of the purposes, goals, intent, and the application information. The RFP FAQ document lists the frequently asked questions that will be posted after today's webinar and updated periodically throughout the course of the RFP process. The glossary of terms is a document that provides definitions and explanation on specific terms relative to the RFP. The Notice of Interest Evaluation Criteria is one of the tools that will be used to assess the NOIs. It was created to establish a collective standard to assist us in consolidating and synthesizing our reviewers' feedback. The impact metrics, which we've spoken of previously, indicates the noted benchmarks that Helios uses to help measure effectiveness and impact in the college enrollment and degree attainment pillars. The Zoom recordings of today's webinar and the January 29th NOI question and answer session will be made available following each session on the webpage. If applicable, updates to these resources will be made available for phase 2 of the RFP. Instructions and links for submission are also detailed on the RFP webpage. If you have any questions or concerns, including technical questions about Smart Simple, the application submission platform, please email floridarfp@helios.org. Please note that Helios will not respond to emails regarding the specifics of an individual application. Clarification will only be provided around stated questions in the NOI. Be sure to join us for the additional question and answer session specifically for the NOI portion of the RFP on Wednesday, January the 29th at 3 p.m. We consider today's webinar as one of many opportunities to promote this impactful initiative. We kindly ask for your support in sharing this information with organizations that may be interested in this RFP. Please feel free to pass along any details you gathered here today to potential applicants. I would now like to turn the presentation back over to Stacey Byer for a brief Q&A regarding the RFP.
Thank you, Walter. Let me just remind everyone, if you have questions, please throw them into the chat and we will try to address as many as we can. So one of the questions we got is, what is the difference between phase 1 and phase 2 of the RFP? Phase 1 is open to any and all eligible applicants to submit the notice of interest to us. But the second phase will be an invitation only phase, sort of based on our review of the NOIs. Another question that has come through is, does the institution applying need to be located in one of the 6 target counties, or can they serve a large number of students in one of the counties but be located in a neighboring county? And the answer is yes. The focus population or focus communities for the RFP are still Hillsborough, Pinellas, Osceola Orange, Miami-Dade, and Broward, but the organizations serving them can be located in a different community. Another question was, what do you mean by historically underrepresented students? And one thing I want to point out is one of the documents on our RFP webpage is a frequently asked questions document. So please refer to that even after this. There may be some of the questions that you may have, you may be able to find the answers there. But what we mean by historically underrepresented students is, for the purposes of this RFP, historically underrepresented students are those that data show are least likely to enroll in college and or complete college. And this gap has been demonstrated over time. Gaps for students can also be found in evidence-based college enrollment and college completion data in categories such as participating in and or obtaining credit for accelerated coursework, high rates of chronic absenteeism. Helios will rely on applicants to provide the data to support their identification of historically underrepresented students as aligned to our key metrics and our outcome areas. So please refer to the frequently asked questions document after the webinar. And if you have additional questions, you can email them to us and we'll share that email information and the QR code to access the webpage in just a few more minutes. Let me see, going through. Can specific high schools apply to the RFP, or is it mainly for organizations? So if you meet the eligibility criteria, you can apply for the RFP. What I will add is that in our process, we will be looking at opportunities for making systemic change. So as you think about as an individual school potentially applying, think about it through that lens, how the efforts of your project might lead to greater systems change, whether that is at a policy level, at a district level. That will be a consideration in our process. But we are trying to run a inclusive, as much as possible, an inclusive process. Another question that came up is, when will Helios consider other communities? At this time, we are focusing our grant making in the 6 communities that were acknowledged earlier in the presentation. Ooh, there's just a lot of questions. Oh, do we have a sense of the number of organizations we expect to fund? And the answer is no. We're staying very open to seeing what's out there. As Walter and both Cherie mentioned earlier in the RFP, we are really looking or using this opportunity to begin to connect with organizations that we potentially haven't connected with in the past. And we're really looking for the opportunity to kind of broaden our table and have more organizations connect up with Helios. So we are staying very flexible on what the ultimate outcome will be in terms of the number of proposals that get funded. I like how the person stated this. For complicated organizations that have many offices, could proposals come from different units not currently engaged with grants? Could they be considered? And the answer is yes. So I think the example given is like a university that, has many colleges and departments and things. As long as it's a partnership that we've not engaged with or are not currently engaged with, we will consider new partnerships in those examples too. And there's a question around funding. In Walter's presentation, he said that we have not set sort of a cap for the top amount that somebody can ask for in this RFP, but he stated that we expect that most proposals will come in between the $150,000 to $300,000 a year range, and the maximum amount of time that we are looking to fund through this RFP is a total of 3 years. You don't have to ask for a 3-year grant, but that's the maximum time frame that we would be looking for. There is a question around eligibility for this particular RFP, and I would just ask, it's very long, so I would ask that you just reference the frequently asked questions document. It will give you the very precise information that you will be looking for around eligibility. And yes, only nonprofits are eligible to apply. Let me just keep going. All the questions that are being raised around can existing grantees apply? There's very specific information in the frequently asked questions that will hone in on those, the answers that you are seeking. And if you don't seek them, please email us at the floridarfp@helios.org email address. Give me just a second. Another question was, if my organization does work in secondary education space after school setting, but does not specifically list education advancement as a part of its mission statement, does that preclude us from being considered? The answer is no. If one of the strategies toward meeting your mission is education, and you can confirm that through, historical experience working in education, et cetera, or you can demonstrate that, that is okay. Our organization is based in one of the areas you have identified, but serve college students statewide. Should we focus on students we're serving in the areas that you identified? And the answer is yes. We are looking to serve students in our 6 communities. And the last question around funding is understanding there's not a cap on the dollars requested. Is there a total value for the available grant funds for the RFP? And we have also, like we have not designated a certain number of grants that we are going to fund, we have not designated a totality of the grant fund for this RFP. Again, we want to remain flexible and open to seeing all the wonderful concepts that come in that we can fund through this RFP process. And I think I have hit all of them. I'll wait. I think we are good. So I would then just refer back to, I think we're going to throw up the contact information slide again. You can use the QR code that will take you directly to the webpage that has all of the documents that we've referenced, the frequently asked questions, the link to actually apply, the glossary of terms. And several people asked for the email address to contact us if you have any additional questions. It's the FloridaRFP@helios.org. I also just want to point out that as you start to go through the application, if you have questions, you can email them to us at the FloridaRFP@helios.org, but we are also going to have an additional Q&A session for the NOI portion of the RFP on Wednesday, January 29th at 3 p.m. And if it's not already live, the opportunity to access registration information for that, it will be this afternoon. Just want to thank everybody for your interest and for joining us today to learn more about this really exciting RFP opportunity. We are looking forward to beginning to engage with you and learn more about the wonderful projects happening across the state of Florida. Thank you very much again for attending, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.